we are here to share at least, perhaps just learn more about who, or rather what is the way of the little way. And I put the title here, The Love That Keeps Us Sane, because we are living in a world that seems to be going haywire. We're going on a roller coaster up and down, especially in the past nearly 2 years of our life. It's really a crazy situation that we are in. And most of us are, for the majority part of it, we are actually locked indoors. We can't go out, we can't leave, we can't go anywhere. And it's in a sense driving us crazy. Well, how do we actually maintain our sanity in the midst of all this difficult situation? So this little way can help us to actually maintain somewhat our composure. Now, do not be deceived by the word little way. It is anything but little. It's just that littleness is about simplicity, but in simplicity itself, it is very, very difficult. As you will see later, the different ways that she used it's just little because it's little in the eyes of the world. The world sees it as something which is insignificant. But when you look at it from the spiritual point of view, it is something which is really not easy to practice. But first of all, before we go into that, just for some of us who do not know who St. Therese is, just a little brief introduction. If you want to read about her whole life, I suggest you read the Story of a Soul, or just find some information about her. But briefly, St. Therese was born in 1873. Her parents, she was actually one of the youngest child born. Her parents are also now saints, Zélie, Martin, and what's the father's name? I can't remember now, sorry. I'm not good with the names anymore, but her parents are also saints now. So she, from a very young age, she's a very active child. But when her mother died at the age of 4, she became timid and reserved. So her whole life was after that, it was a series of difficulties in terms of meeting with people and emotional difficulties. So she had to go through a lot of emotional struggles from when she was 4 until about 10, when she had the conversion at Christmas. So all these experiences also led her to the love of God, and led her to believe that God is love and not otherwise. I will explain later why I say this. But nevertheless, when her elder sister Pauline, whom she took as her second mother after her mother died, decided to enter Carmel, she also said, I too will enter Carmel. At the end, I think she was like 5 or 6. I don't think she knew what exactly was talking about. But she said with such conviction that I too will enter Carmel, even though she didn't know what it was. She just wanted to follow Pauline, her elder sister. And so, but Pauline's entry into Carmel really devastated her. And then when another sister entered the convent, it also really devastated her. So she needed a lot of love, which these two sisters provided, but they left, and so she felt lost. And so she always had to recourse to the divine, turning to God and Mother Mary. So at the age of 15, she entered the Carmel of Lisieux. Even her entry was actually difficult. She wanted to enter earlier. She even went to the Pope to ask for his intervention. But the Pope said, if it's God's will, you will enter. And so she did at the age of 15, which is young. Normally at that time, they accept only when she's 16. Nevertheless, she entered at the age of 15. And a year later, she took on the habit of a novice. And then after that, she made her first vows. And not long after that, when she was 22 or 23, she contracted tuberculosis, what we know now as tuberculosis. But at that time, it was not really known. So at the final moments of her life, she started, at the request of her sisters, she started writing her story, because she said she has a lot of memories that she always tells during recreation. And so her sister says, why not ask her to write it down? for us to read. So the story of a soul is actually what she wrote during the last years of her life. And it's not meant for public viewing. Actually, it's more meant for her sisters. But now we have access to the autobiography. So if you ever read it, just bear in mind that it is something very personal and is written in during the context of that time, late 19th century. So you cannot read it with the mindset of 21st century. You have to read the mindset of that century in a French setting. Because when I first read it before I entered Carmel, honestly, I can tell you I wanted to throw the book to the wall. It was really difficult for me to read. But I gradually learned to appreciate her writing, her simplicity. And so this is the person who, through her life, through her time in the monastery, found a way to live life without losing her sanity. You imagine you're in a monastery, cloistered monastery, you can never leave. There are 20 women inside for the rest of your life. Sooner or later, it will drive you crazy. So she managed to find ways to keep herself sane. And these are the bits and pieces that we find from her autobiography and her last conversations. Now, she always pictured herself as a little child. In the arms of God, she is God the Father, and she is the little child of God, and she totally abandoned herself to God as that child, knowing that God will take care of her, and she, in her weakness and feebleness, will not be able to ascend to heaven unless God brings her up. And so this is what she says. Our Lord's love is revealed perfectly in the most simple soul that resists his grace in nothing, as in the most excellent soul. In fact, since the nature of love is to humble oneself. Sorry, hold on. If all souls remember those of the holy doctors who illumine the church with the clarity of their teaching, it seems God would not descend so low when coming to their hearts. But he created a child who knows only how to make his feeble cries heard. It is to their heart that God deigned to lower himself. When coming down in this way, God manifests this infinite grandeur. So what she's saying is, God's love is revealed perfectly in everyone. Whether you are intelligent, you're a doctor of the church, you're a saint, you're a child, you're someone simple, you're a housewife, whatever state of life you are in, God will still reveal his love perfectly in our souls to us, as long as we open ourselves to him. And as if you have gone for Mass for the Feast of St. Therese, the gospel itself talks about the greatness of a little child. The little child is the one who will enter the kingdom of heaven. So it's not about being childish, but being childlike, to have that trust in the Father whom we know loves us very much. Now, just give you a background of the time of St. Therese. Now, during that time, there was a heresy called Jansenism, which is basically what it teaches is the body is evil, the soul is good. So you have, in order to make yourself holy, you have to punish yourself. So at that time, so it really focuses a lot on all these bodily things like flagellation and fasting and whatnot, and whatever that makes you uncomfortable. So it was raging at that time. People had this fear of God, that God was a judge who opened his account book and everybody named with the thing. So every type of punishment do to yourself, it sort of like blot out that sin. So they were living in fear, and they saw God as a punisher. I think this when I was growing up in the 80s and the 90s, this thought still prevailed somewhat when I was learning catechism in school, and traces of this can still be found in the world today. So this fear didn't allow people to realize that they are children of God. I mean, if you look at scripture, clearly tells us we are the children of God. You read the gospel, the letters of Paul, the letters of St. John, everything says we are the beloved of God. We are the children of God. And therefore, we should not fear God. You know, he is the loving Father who we can go to, not someone whom we fear, who's always holding the rotan. And so this is why for St. Therese, God is merciful love, not someone who's always punishing. Jesus himself revealed that God to us. And the thing is, with that kind of attitude, because Therese also grew up in a very loving family, she was surrounded by so much love, actually, which is really quite unusual in these days. So she was able to get involved in a life and the life of the people without being drawn into it, without being trapped into it. So she, in a sense, she was able to live life fully without being drawn or trapped by other people. And she knew how to love others without being entangled in their problems, especially in the monastery. And so she was able to deal with the absurdities of life without losing her sanity. And so life can sometimes be very absurd. We know that a lot of craziness, but she was able to deal and live with that. So there are 6 aspects that I'm going to share with you tonight about this so-called little way. Now, the first thing is secrets. Now, you wouldn't think that secret is something that can keep us sane, but there are different types of secrets. Now, basically, there are 2 types of secret. One is dark and one is the normal one. Dark secrets are what we normally encourage to share, at least to someone we trust. Because dark secrets can be something that we keep from other people, that we don't want people to know. But the more we keep those dark secrets inside us, the more it festers, the more it eats up our soul, and it will eventually drive us crazy. I don't know how many of you have actually watched the series or movies called Star Wars, or even Lord of the Rings. Because in Star Wars, there's this menacing big fellow called Darth Vader. So how did he become that? He started actually as an innocent little boy who was happy and joyful and helping other people. But he grew up to become this mechanical person who just hunted people and filled with so much hatred. Because he had this secret that he was not able to share with other people. And that actually tore him apart psychologically. So some secrets, even though it is difficult for us, that we think people will look at it in a different way, we have to share with others. Otherwise, it will drive us apart as well, which is why confession, spiritual direction is necessary, because these are the avenues that we can share our dark secret with. Because for us priests, there is that seal of confession. We don't go and gossip around. So that is a dark secret. Now, the other secret is the good one. And this is what we have to be careful about. Now, for St. Therese, if you look at this picture, those who are familiar with her story, she fell sick at about the age of 10, right? And the doctors could not diagnose what it was. They didn't know. All the doctors, they tried to diagnose, they tried to give her medication, but nothing worked. She was just in anxiety all the time. She was confined to bed. She had fever. She had all kinds of things. And some doctors even attributed to the attack of the devil, right? Even medical science couldn't cure her. So one day, she cried in pain. And so Marie, her second sister, was there. And so she started in her room, there was a statue of Our Lady of Victory or Our Lady of Smiles. So Marie went to kneel at the statue and started praying for Our Lady's intercession to heal Therese. At that time, Therese saw a bright light coming from the statue towards her. You can look at the picture, that one of the depictions, and she said she saw, okay, this is what she said. This is what she said in her story. All of a sudden, the Blessed Virgin appeared beautiful to me. I thought, the Virgin smiled at me. How happy I am. But never will I tell anyone, for my happiness would then disappear. So this is from Story of a Soul. Now, this is a secret that she only knew, because that happened to her only. Marie couldn't see it, but she knew that, if she want to share with this, it would disappear. Now, why? Okay, before I get to the why, but she shared it with Marie, her sister, because she loved Marie very much. So she shared with her this experience of her healing from this Our Lady of Smile. And Marie said, why not share it with the nuns of Lisieux, the Carmelite nuns? She was reluctant because she knew that if she did that, she will not feel the happiness and the joy of this experience anymore. But because she loved Marie very much, so she contented and said, okay, let's go and share this experience. So you can imagine a little girl of maybe 10 years old going to a monastery, maybe 20 nuns, different ages, and you share the experience to them. It's like you bring a little child now to Carmel in Kuching or Carmel in Miri or whichever Carmel, and you ask them to share the experience. It's quite a scary experience, at least. And I don't know whether the nuns are listening or not. So, but if they are listening, please don't fault me for when I say all these things. But for a fact that sometimes when we have recreation with the nuns or when we speak to them, sometimes we share our experience, and they out of they want to clarify certain things, so they will ask a lot of questions. So the more Therese shared the story, the more questions she got, and she felt so confused by all the questions, because they were all like very tiny details. Like what color was the veil of Mother Mary? What did she look like? What color was her clothes? What did she wear? All these kind of things. Like, come on lah. The most important, the experience. So, but she became confused, and she began to doubt that she experienced it at all. And so when that happened, her happiness totally disappeared. So, just as she predicted, she lost that joy of that whole experience. So when we try to share something which is not easily shared, it is very difficult, because then what we are trying to communicate will sometimes be lost, the joy of it at least, because all of us will have our own conversion story, or our own spiritual experiences during prayer or during healing sessions. And sometimes those experiences are just meant for us. It's not meant for other people to hear. Sometimes for the good of the other people, in order to help them, yes, we share. But sometimes it is meant for us personally. And these are the things that we need to keep to ourselves. Because here, Therese calls it the memory of grace. It is a memory because we remember it as an event, but no longer as a joy. Because once you share it, the joy is lost. It becomes a normal everyday event. But when we keep it to ourselves, we know it's a grace-filled moment at that point where we receive the grace of God, which is why sometimes when people say forgive and forget, we should not. You forgive, yes. You don't forget. What you don't forget? You forget the causes of the argument or whatever it is. But we do not forget the grace that God had given us at that point to forgive. That is the grace that we need to remember. That is the moment that we need to remember. And that is something that we can go back to when we are faced with difficult or emotional challenges. For me personally, when I was about 19 years old, I went through a bad series of difficulties, always questioning God, doubting God's existence. So I went for a healing session, and there I obtained, I had a very, very, very strong healing experience of the love of God in my life. And that became my focal point, my memory of grace, in a sense that even though I'm sharing with you now, I can still feel the emotion that I felt at that time. And because the experience is so strong. And whenever I have doubts or have difficulties, especially in my vocation as a Carmelite, as a priest, I will always go back to that event, knowing that God is there for me. God will be there to heal me. And that I know is my anchor point. And that is a memory that we should preserve, because that is the one that can help us to maintain our sanity. Much damage is incurred when one secret is exposed to this inquisitive world. We know all this. The moment we just tell somebody, we just have to tell somebody, hey, I tell you this, you don't tell anybody else. That's it. Bye-bye. It's like telling to the reporter, the whole world will know. So people are inquisitive. That is true. People love to gossip. People love to, hey, what happened? It's like normal human nature. But when we share freely, it also damages us. We don't share the dark secret, also destroys us. So we have to find a balance between what to share and not what to share. Because one extreme is we totally close up, we don't share anything. Good secret, bad secret, we don't want to share. On the other hand, you just go and tell everybody in the world. Just go and tell whoever want to listen, tell. That is also bad. Because then everybody will start talking about us and like pointing fingers, and they will like, oh, what. So it is the two extremes. We need to find a balance when to share and when not to share. So in a sense, when we share the thing, it's because we need to, so that we free ourselves from being trapped. But when we want to preserve that memory of grace, then this is what Therese called living a hidden life, where we hide from the world. We exist in the world, but we do not make ourselves prominent by getting everybody's attention. So that is the first one. And that brings us to the second point, finding our way in life. We keep our secrets, we share or we secret, but then what? How do we actually navigate the ways of life without the danger of going insane or losing our way? Which way to go? These represent the choice of St. Therese to live before the eyes of the world, but not drawing any attention to herself. Now we know that in the world these days, everybody clamors for attention. We have TikTok, we have TikTok is all the rage now. In China, we have things like Weibo and all the other platforms. Their sole attention is to draw attention to themselves. They look at me. Even Facebook is there's a gender there in Facebook. We put things on Facebook. Why? To attract attention, to get likes. People don't like. Why people don't like? We put Instagram. People don't like. Why? Is it not nice? Is it my picture bad? Do I look ugly? But why? Why do we need to draw attention to ourselves? It is really unnecessary. So this is one of the things that I mentioned, the background about Jansenism and how they try to practice. We call this, I can't remember the term now. So basically, you are supposed to just, do uncomfortable things to try and all this, we call it ascetical practices. So one of the prominent practices at that time in Karma was to wear an iron cross with sharp prongs against her bare chest. So most of us wear a cross, metallic cross, and it's on our chest. But this one there's sharp thorns, So you're actually poking against her chest. And this is very, very painful. And she tried to do that because that was the prevalent practice at the time. Everybody was doing it. So if you don't do it, people are saying something wrong with you. But she said, and this one she told it to her sister. She said, she told me how she wore her little iron cross for a long time and that it made her sick. She told me too that it wasn't God's will for her, nor for us to throw ourselves into great mortifications. This sickness was a proof of it. This is one of her experience that led her to believe that God doesn't demand all these things from us. Why would, if God is a loving God, why would God demand we hurt ourselves to, to cause ourselves pain? Yes, in the early days of the church fathers or different saints, they do mortification to ward off sin, or at least to help them to prevent them from falling into the sin of the flesh. But this is done like, in the extreme already. To prove your holiness, you have to do this. If you don't do this, you're not holy. But for Therese, this cannot be true, because if God is someone who's loving, then why does God want to make people sick? Now, so after that, she stopped wearing it, but she didn't know what to do. She was in Carmel, and since that was the practice at the time, she said, if I don't follow, what way do I follow then? To live my vocation as a Carmelite. Others are doing this. What am I going to do? And she struggled for many months. She really struggled to find her place in Carmel. So one day, out of desperation, she went to the infirmary, the bilik sakit, and she wanted to talk to the previous mother superior. But when she went there, there were already 2 sisters there visiting her. That was the maximum for visiting. So she left quietly. But the previous mother superior saw her, and she said this to her: serve God with peace and joy. Remember, my child, our God is a God of peace. And this message convinced her that when we serve God, when we are trying to find our way in life, we don't have to do it with a sour face. We don't have to, like punish ourselves, because we serve God with peace and joy. Because our God is a God of joy, is a God of peace, a God of love. That is what we believe now. And that is what we accept now. So when we serve God, when we try to find our way in life as a secular Carmelite or as a layperson in the church, just remember that we serve God with joy and peace. And Teresa Avila tells us very clearly, God save us from sour-faced saints. Don't be that sour face until Assam also lose. So just be aware of that. We are all called to live this hidden life. That means we live an authentic life, simple and without pretense. So we live as we are. We don't have to pretend to be whom we are not. And this is also currently a worldwide phenomenon, I would call it. Especially if you just look at social media, you will see that a lot of people pretend to be who they are not. I mean, very simple example, even the phone has a beauty app now. A 50-year-old man or woman can transform themselves into a 30-year-old man or woman, but it's not them. And people do all kinds of things to become who they are not, simply to be accepted by the world. But we are not of the world. We are in this world, but we don't belong to the world. We belong to God. And so we live a life that is in conformity with God. And so if we want to do that, we have to live an authentic life as a disciple of Christ, a simple life, not pretending to be anything but who we are. People don't accept us. I mean, if people don't accept us for the bad thing, bad habit, we have to change. But if we live the ways of the gospel, which are contrary to the way of the world, then fine, do it. We can easily become lost in our practices of penances, but by being led by pride, basically. Actually, we become proud. But when we do a lot of penances, when we do a lot of mortification, and this is not on a finger pointing at anybody. Okay, this is a general statement. We go for daily mass, Sunday mass, we say rosary, novena, all kinds of things, all kind of devotion. Which is good. Okay, which is all in itself is good, but there is a danger of becoming too prideful. we become proud because we think we are all holy. We are doing this every day. We pray the rosary 5 times a day, or we say the divine office, things like that. So there is that danger. Even though we may not realize it, but slowly, we will begin to judge people like, how come that person not doing it? How that person, how come I can do it, the other person don't do it? We become judgmental. But that is not an authentic life. That is not the life that we are called to live. We are called to live that hidden life, which is what Jesus says in the gospel. When you pray, go into your room and pray in secret, and our Father in heaven will hear you. So we don't have to show off to everybody that we are holy. And God knows we are not. Even then, we might not be holy. Pride leads to insanity because we fear the opinion of other people. Because the more we expose ourselves, the more we show ourselves, when we do all these things, we kneel for hours on the pew, adoration, or things like that, then people's eyes will be on us all the time, trying to catch us. So then we fear that will happen, because what if I do this, what will people think of me? If I don't do this, what will people think of me? And so very soon, our minds will start to play tricks on us. We will see things that are not there. We will hear things that are not there. People say one thing and we misinterpret to be another thing. And sooner or later, that itself will also drive us crazy. Because we start to become delusional. So the hidden life helps us to find our way in a way that helps us maintain our sanity. Because we don't draw attention to ourselves. And when we don't draw attention to ourselves, we don't have to fear other people's opinion. Now, this is one experience that Therese experienced in her monastery. She was actually made an sort of like assistant novice mistress, unofficially, to jaga the novices. So one day, one of the novices came and told her this, how her work was tiring her. Therese asked her how she felt when she was complimented for her work. The novice replied that she felt revived. So Therese told her that it's not the work that was causing her the fatigue. It was her need to have her work recognized that caused her fatigue. When we do things to gain approval of others, we drain ourselves emotionally, because we keep trying to get the approval of others. You know, when recently I came across one on YouTube, a vlog. This young adult, young lady, she was doing YouTube videos for years. Basically a vlog, what they call a vlog lah, you know, lifestyle and things like that. But she said the more she did it, the more anxiety she got, because every time she did the video, she had to think of how to draw people to her videos, how to draw subscribers, how to make people like her videos, watch her videos. So when people don't approve, you know, then you get a thumbs up or thumbs down. That affected their popularity and their income as well. And she said finally she decided to stop because it was causing her really, really unnecessary anxieties and stress. And if she doesn't stop, she will just disintegrate emotionally. I mean, she made this video just to explain all this. So when it is the same for it, even for us, little thing, when we try to not say show off, we try to do things so that other people can praise us and things like that. We are just doing harm to ourselves, because the more we want the approval of other people, the more we have to give. And if we don't get any thanks, then we become very bitter, very angry. We don't have to go very far. If you're serving in the church, you know, serving in the church is a thankless task. Nobody will come and thank you for your work that you do. Very often you get the opposite. Occasionally you may get people thanking you or giving you information, but very often I can tell you, you will just get a lot of criticism and whatnot. So, but we have to ask ourselves, why are we doing it? Why are we serving in the church? Why am I doing this? Is it to get the approval of others? Is it so that the priest can praise me in front of a congregation? Or the priest can give me a thumbs up? These are the questions that we need to ask ourselves. Because we do work, yes. We are tired. Physically, we are tired. But emotionally, we are tired not because of the work. It's like what Therese said. is the need to have ourselves complimented. When we don't get people's compliment, when people don't thank us, then we become very bitter. We become very angry. Why nobody appreciate my work? And that really will bring down our energy. And negative energy actually drains us very, very fast. And we start to lash out at people. And eventually we will just stop serving the church and leave because we think that people don't appreciate us. But the most important thing is we do it because it is pleasing to God. We are called to serve God through the people. So as long as our work pleases God, that is enough. Easy to say, I know. I've been in church ministry for many years before I joined the Carmelite Order. And I know it's very difficult to have that kind of thinking all the time. But we need to calculate that kind of thinking so that we don't stress ourselves unnecessarily. And so by not drawing attention to ourselves, it prevents us from growing crazy and to help us to be more authentic to ourselves, to be more true to myself, because this is who I am. This is what I'm comfortable with. I know what I'm doing. I don't have to get your approval just because you don't like what I do. As long as I know that I'm serving God in this way and it is correct, then it's fine. We can only see our real self in the eyes of God, which is true, because we are made in the image and likeness of God. Now, the next one is about silence. Now, silence is a very difficult thing. One of the philosophers and mathematicians of the 19th century or 20th century said this, is Blaise Pascal. He said, man's or humanity's greatest failure is their inability to sit still. It's very simple. You just go to a silent retreat or you go to a place where there's adoration. Those who can do adorations are the ones who really can sit down and sit still and keep silent. But you find some people who after 1-2 minutes start scratching here, scratching there, move here, move there, clear their throat and scratch here, scratch there. These are the people cannot take silence on. But silence is something that can actually focus ourselves on God. And actually that actually helps us to, in a sense, recharge ourselves. Now, Therese says this, he teaches without noise of words. Never have I heard him speak, but I feel that he is within me at each moment. He is guiding me and inspiring me with what to say and do. Now, this kind of feeling, all of us will have experienced, because sometimes we just seem to know what to do or what to say. I'm giving you this talk now, but I'm not having any paper in my hand. I'm just looking at my slide. I'm not talking just from my head, because I know that at every given moment, God is there to guide me, right? Because sometimes when I talk from the slide, something that I've never thought of will just come to me and I'll share it. So for me, that is something which comes from God, and that is what Therese says also. This intuitive feeling that we have, this is from God, and it's only in the silence of our life that this thought will come. We live in a world of noise. We cannot, and silence sometimes fears us, but it is only in the silence that we can hear the voice of God. Just like the prophet Elijah, when he went up to the mountain, God was not in the earthquake, he wasn't in the thunder, he wasn't in the storm, he was in the silence, and that's where we will find God. But silence, that is a silence of maintaining ourselves and our inner silence. But the other silence is the exterior silence, which is when to speak and when not to speak. Silence is not a substitute for the courage to speak. So sometimes we think that we should be meek and humble. We don't talk, because we are not we don't have the courage to speak. But it's not that. Very often, sometimes we find ourselves in situations that we either have to speak up or we don't. Therese once had an experience when there was another sister who was very close to the Mother Superior at that time, very close. So she felt that this wasn't right. She was just a junior, but she said, if I don't speak up, it is wrong. So she went to tell that sister that you shouldn't do this. This is not healthy. And the sister of course got upset. She began to cry and all. And said, yeah, if mother asks you why you cry, you can tell her I told you this. So she's not afraid to voice out when it is not just. It is same for us. When we need to keep silent, we keep silent. We need to know when to say things and when to keep quiet. Choosing our battles wisely. You may win the battle, or you lose the war. So sometimes it's better to lose the battle and win the war. It's either we have to choose when to say things and when not to say things, because it will either help us to keep our sanity or lose our peace and sanity. The question is this: how often have we walked away winning an argument but losing our peace of soul? I'm very sure everyone can relate to this. We win an argument, also you die, also you want to win the argument. So you shoot everything you can. Finally you win. But does it leave us with peace of mind? This is for us to reflect. Because at least for me, my own experience is very often, if I really die, also must win the argument, I know that I will lose my night's sleep. So which is why when this happens, if I overstep that, immediately I'll go and apologize. Otherwise, I will not have peace of mind. But this is something that we need to learn, when to hold our tongue and when to say it. And this is what St. Therese says. What good does it do to defend or explain ourselves? Let the matter rest and say nothing, O blessed silence that gives so much peace to souls. And I like this picture actually. It put it very nicely. If you can't say nothing nice, don't say nothing at all. Which is true. If our tongue is very poisonous, one tongue come out is worse than the viper's tongue. But you don't kill the person, but you kill their soul. And so we have to learn when to maintain our silence, that can help us maintain our sanity, and when we need to speak up so that it doesn't cost us our sanity. Because sometimes when we see something done which is not right, of course we have to speak up. Otherwise, we keep thinking about it because we say, oh, I should have done this, I should have done this, I should have made this right. And then, yes, we need to speak up. But if there are situations where if we speak up, we know we'll make the matters worse, then don't say. That's it. That can help us to actually keep our sanity and our peace of heart. Then this is a very, very difficult thing, minding our own business. We always like to, as Malay say, jaga tepi kain orang. We just like to go and artists go and gossip and all that, but actually, what good does it do to us? Curiosity is, we're all curious people, but it's like a poison ivy. The more we scratch, the worse it becomes. Our whole body also becomes like that. And so the more we become curious, the more we inquire into other people's business, sooner or later, nobody will come near to us. So minding our own business is to choose not to agonize over things that are beyond our control. A lot of things are beyond our control. Other people's life is not in our control. What we can control is our own life. What we do, what we decide. What other people do, that's their problem. They want to do, what can we do? Even St. Therese says this in The Way of Perfection. She says, what's the point of agonizing over your relative or how they spend their money, everything like that? No point. What? They're not going to listen to you. So no point agonizing. So when we mind our own business, it eliminates the envy and resentment that comes from comparing ourselves with others. And it sums up very nicely in this quote: life is easier when we mind our own business. Sometimes we make our life more difficult than it should be. Now, the other thing is, of course, minding our own business does not negate the commandments of Jesus, which is to love God and to love our neighbor as ourselves. And this brings us to this sanity of loving freely. We may think that, sometimes love do does hurt us. Yes, true. But we also have to see with what kind of love do we love that causes that hurt. Now, Therese was able to live in this same state of mind because she did not look for a reward. By focusing on her God-assigned task and not concerned with the reward or gratitude, she freed herself from worry. So we need to let go of the need for results before we begin a task. Inner detachment can help us maintain our sanity. Now, what does this got to do with love? Now, you know that the highest level of love is agape, the unconditional love. When we have unconditional love, when we love freely, of course, we will do everything freely. We will do things for the other person. We will serve the church with joy, and we don't look for reward. It's almost the same like just now when I say, you know, we want to be complimented for our work and all that. Same thing here. We do work. Don't be concerned with the result. When we start something, we will always start to think, what will happen? What will the outcome be? Will this work? What will the people say? You know, things like that. So we are always trying to think 5-10 steps ahead. But we forget when we do that, we lose focus of the present. We lose focus of the journey that brings us towards that end. So if we don't focus on that, then we focus on what is in front of us, then it will help us maintain our peace of soul as well, because we don't have to worry about what's going to happen next. Jesus himself said in the gospel, do not worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow has enough worries. Today has enough worries of its own. Let tomorrow worry about itself. And she says this in our last conversation. To the right and to the left, I throw to my little birds the good grain that God places in my hands. And then I let things take their course. I busy myself with it no more. Sometimes it is just as though I had thrown nothing. At other times it does some good. But God tells me, give always, without being concerned about the result. I said she was actually assisting the novice mistress in forming the novices. So whatever she had, you know, she give. She's not concerned about whether what she give will be sufficient or not. Whatever she had from God, she will give. So it's like the sower in the gospel. We are all called to be sowers in the gospel. We can only sow the seed, but whether or not the seed bear good fruit or bad fruit or lousy fruit, that is not up to us to decide. All we need to do is sow the seed. When we serve the church, when we serve people, we sow the seed. That is all. And we don't bother with it anymore. Some people just try and worry about this. Okay, if I do this, why no response? Why this person like that? But again, is it really our problem? All we are called to do is just spread God's love, God's message. That's it. I remember many years ago when I was asked to share with a group of friends this about a topic. Then one of my friends asked me, okay, convince me. I said, my job is not to convince you. I'm just here to share with you what I know. Convincing is the job of God. If God cannot convince you, no one else can convince you. So it's the same for us here. If we put ourselves in the place of God, we are just giving ourselves unnecessary stress. So letting go of the need for result is to let go of unnecessary concern or worry. Therese attained peace because she was able to differentiate the right kind of care from the wrong kind of care. So what's the difference then? The right kind of care is to pay attention to what we do, the task that we are doing. When we focus too much on the result, sometimes we don't pay attention to what we do because we just absent-mindedly do. Wrong kind of care is worrying about the outcome. Which is why I said when you worry about the outcome, we don't focus on the thing in front of us. When we sow the seed, it also depends on our disposition. Do we give freely out of our own willingness, or we give grudgingly? It's like, okay, I do. You know, we go at that situation sometimes, but Sometimes we give grudgingly because we feel that we are not willing to part from the thing that we're supposed to give. Something has been taken away from us, our time, our energy, or whatever it is. And that is something that we are not willing to give up. But when we are asked to do it, say, okay, I do it. But that is not loving freely. When that happens, we become resentful. And that actually festers in our soul as well. In this inwardly designed to give before being asked help to get rid of this grudging feeling. So when we have decided to give, then it becomes easier. We choose to give, not because we want to, because we have to, or because we need to, we choose to. There's a lot of whole world of difference. Different words meaning different things, but when I choose to give, then it's given freely, 100%, without reservation. I give, and I don't think about it anymore. In choosing to give and love freely, we free ourselves from the animosity that inflicts us. It frees us from being consumed by our feelings. Our feelings sometimes can be very, very, very strong, especially when we feel that we've been taken advantage of, and it will consume us really. But that's why we say, choose to give. And St. Paul also says, God loves a cheerful giver. So give cheerfully. And this, of course, brings us to the perspective of divine charity, because love in itself, as humans, of course, we know our love is imperfect. God's love is perfect. So when we are giving, we are loving, we are charitable, it has to be done from a divine perspective, not our human perspective, because it is flawed. But when we give from divine perspective, we see it from the eyes of God instead of the eyes of humanity. For St. Therese, we deprive ourselves of happiness when we are critical of others and don't make the effort to see others in the light of charity. Being able to think and see in charity is a costly grace. This is the fruit of acting in charity toward those who trigger our strongest dislike. Now, when we are critical of others, we are always okay. Tell you a story lah. Okay, now this man went to see a pastor, telling about the problems that we have. He's not able to be very charitable. So the pastor said, okay, look out the window. What do you see? He said, I see a group of children playing. Then he hold up a coin in front of his eyes, blocking the window. Now what do you see? He says, I see the coin. Very often, this is what we see. We see the coin, we don't see the children, which is why we are always critical. Because we cannot see beyond ourselves. We cannot see beyond what is blocking our eyes. That is not the light of charity, that is the light of selfishness. Which is why when we want to give freely, is really something very costly. It costs us, yes, costs us our time, and it's a really, we need a lot of grace to be able to do that. And this is one of her experience. Now, this one, in her autobiography, Story of a Soul, one of her experience was this. She was assigned to look after a very elderly nun. Now she needs help. That means she needs to be brought from her room to the makam place, help her to sit down, and then help her up again, bring her back to her room, things like that. Now this particular elderly nun, very, very difficult. Everything also she criticizes. Too slow, she say, why you so slow? Too fast, she say, why you too fast? Cannot help properly, why you do like this? What you do? She, everything you do cannot please her. And St. Therese, for many months, she kept to that task. Always kena. And many times the elderly nun told Therese, I knew you were not the right person to help me. You're so weak, you're so slow, you're this, you're not considerate. But she did it nevertheless. She never complained. She did it with charity, with divine charity. And this is what she shared with her sister, who became priors the mother priors at the time already. She says, this year, dear mother, God has given me the grace to understand what charity is. I understood it before, it is true, but in an imperfect way. I had not fathomed the meaning of these words of Jesus. The second commandment is like the first. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. Dear mother, when meditating upon these words of Jesus, I understand how imperfect was my love for the sisters. I understand now that charity consists in bearing the faults of others, in not being surprised at their weakness, in being edified by the smallest acts of virtue we see them practice. But I understand above all that charity must not remain hidden in the bedroom of one's heart. Jesus has said, no one lights a lamp and puts it under a bushel basket, but upon the lampstand, so as to give light to all in the house. We are that light. And who is the one who lights us? God. God is the one who lights us. We are the lamp lighted by God. And when God gives us that light, it is the light of divine charity, not our own charity. We are just reflecting the love of God. So why do we withhold our love from other people or give to those whom we like only? And we don't give to the people we don't like. I don't like this person. I don't want to go. I don't like how she talk. I don't like how she behave. I don't want to go. I don't want to charm this fella. They talk very weird, very strange. But we are all called to be that light. And she says precisely here, to give light to all in the house, not just to this person or that person, to give to everybody. So my question is, why are we still not behaving like that light, that divine light that gives light to everyone? So this brings me to the final point, which is an attended life, an authentic life. Here, the quote also, I found it very good. It says, authenticity is freedom from the illusion of fear and alignment to the reality of love. When we are authentic, when we live ourselves authentically, we free ourselves from fear, from what other people think of us, from what we think of ourselves. But sometimes we also think badly of ourselves. But when we know we live an authentic life, we are being true to ourselves. And who are we? We are the children of God. We have many regrets in our life. Right? This is true. And we often go through life in a state of sleepwalking, which is also true. That's why sometimes we never pay attention to what we do, because we are just planning to do what's next. Like we eat, but we are thinking of what to do next. And when we are doing something, we are thinking what to do next. We're always living in the future. We're never living in the present. And so we are essentially sleepwalking through life. Life is just passing by us. We don't know what's going on around us. And if I wrote here, the soul's biggest regret that he hasn't heeded his true vocation, which is a call to love. Now, Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI, in his encyclical Deus Caritas, as God is love, he says that man who is created in the image and likeness of God is able to love because of this fact. Because we are created by God who is love, so we are able to give that love, which is the love of God. And so in the deepest part of our soul, like it or not, we know we are exactly made in the image of likeness of God. And our soul is created to love freely, to give this love of God to everyone. And if we are really true to ourselves, if we really believe that we are in the image of likeness of God, then when we do not heed our vocation to love freely, then we should really regret. Because sometimes we can fix that problem. We can rectify certain problems, but some regret we can't. Unfortunately, the English only have one word for regret. If you look at the Chinese, it's actually two. It gives a different nuance. So which is why sometimes you look at the Mandarin word, it's easier to differentiate between the two regrets. Okay, I've said this already. So I've said this also. To love is a fearful thing. It robs us of what we cling to, our energy, our emotions. But by not loving, we deprive ourselves of God who is within us. True, we fear to love simply because there are many things that we cling to, that we attach ourselves to. When we start to love, we have to let go of certain things. The hands which are the hands which holds a lot of things cannot love, because in order to love, our hands have to be free. But when our hands are free, we have to let go of a lot of things. And sometimes these are the detachments that we need to let go of. If you read John on the Cross Ascent to Mount Carmel, that he speaks of all these detachments, even of temporal goods or spiritual goods, of all kinds of good, so that we free ourselves to love. What we give out is given back to us. This is also in from the gospel. What we withhold from other people as well. So in order to remain sane, we need to be rooted in God's life and love. And here, Therese puts it very aptly. Perfection consists in doing his will, in being what he wills us to be. God does not expect us to be something that we are not. God asks us only one thing of us, and that is for us to love. And love is not beyond our grasp, because all of us have this capacity to love. And that is all we are asked to do. Jesus himself said the greatest commandment is what? Love God, love neighbor. Everything else is just commentary. Everything else is a result of that two commandments. If we cannot love God and love neighbor authentically, then everything else we do is actually in vain. And to love is an expression of an authentic life as a child of God. Love is always concrete. It's not something up in the air. It's expressed in our actions, our words, the things that we do. It's something that we can see, something that's tangible. It's not abstract. It's not vague. It's not a vague mood. It's always a choice. It is this love of God dwelling in our actions that make us sane. So it is this love that will always keep us sane. Because in all that we have said, secrets and everything and silence, everything we do it is because of the love of God that is residing in us. St. Paul tells us that we are the temple of the Holy Spirit, and that is what we are. But do we treat ourselves as the temple of the Holy Spirit? Sometimes we don't. We treat ourselves like the market in the town. So if we are truly the temple of the Holy Spirit, if we truly have that love of God within us, we claim to be children of God, then we have to love. And like Therese said, God doesn't expect a lot of us. He doesn't expect us to be who we are not. We don't have to be superhero or do superhuman things or heroic things. All we need to do is love. That's all. Love will help us to do many other things. And so I'd like to share with you, in closing, a poem. Now, this poem, some people attribute to Mother Teresa, but she did not write this. This was found hanging in the office. Some of you may know this. Now, the poem goes like this. People are often unreasonable, irrational, and self-centered. Forgive them anyway. If you are kind, people may accuse you of selfish, ulterior motive. Well, be kind anyway. If you are successful, you will win some unfaithful friends and make some genuine enemies. Succeed anyway. If you are honest and sincere, people may deceive you. Be honest and sincere anyway. What you spend years creating, others could destroy overnight. Guess. Create anyway. If you find serenity and happiness, some people may be jealous. Be happy anyway lah. It's not their problem. What? The good you do today will often be forgotten. Do good anyway lah. I mean, there are so many people who have done good in the past. They are forgotten also. What? But does it matter? No. It's the effect that matters. Give the best you have and it will never be enough, which is also true. But give your best anyway. Because in the final analysis, it is between you and God. It will never was between you and them anyway. It is always between us and God. In the end, when we get to heaven at the judgment gate, we'll just be asked, how much have you loved? They're not going to ask you how many degrees you have, or how many church organizations you become president of, or whatever. Not how many churches you build. No, nothing like that. That's all. Just St. John on the cross wrote that in the evening you will be judged. You will be examined by love. That's it. So ultimately, to keep ourselves sane, just keep in mind the love of God that is within us, because from that, our actions will always be guided by the love of God, and we will not put ourselves or give ourselves unnecessary stress or anxiety over the things that we cannot control, or the people that we don't like, or the people who drive us crazy. I mean, a lot of people don't like Jesus, but he loved them anyway. We are not Jesus yet, but we are called to be like him. So this is something that can help us to find our sanity and center ourselves to God. Okay, so this is what I have to share for this evening. I hope that it has given us some food for thought.
Thank you, Father. It was very insightful, very captivating. The Holy Spirit is really upon us tonight. It was a grace-filled talk. Thank you so much. Feel very blessed tonight.
Thank you.